This is Platemark. My name is Ann Shafer, and I am your host. Platemark is a podcast about prints and the printmaking ecosystem. We're talking fine art, limited edition usually, prints, etchings, lithographs, screen print, woodcuts, and other things. It is my joy to talk to 5 artists in this particular series that were selected to be in an exhibition run by Print Austin this winter of 2024. And my guest today, Teresa Cole, is one of those artists, one of the 5. She is an artist and professor at Tulane University, where she has been a professor for nearly 30 years. Her work is really interesting. I think you'll really love it and appreciate it. She's a terrific teacher as well, and a delight to talk to. Did you know that Tulane's master's program is tuition-free? All right, let's see. Housekeeping. I identify as a cis-het white woman, and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. Images we talk about will be over in the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. Over there's also a support and donate button. You can help me keep the lights on over here. It's just me doing this. All right, buckle up. Let's get rolling. Teresa, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks for coming on Platemark.
Thank you for having me, Ann. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, sure. So you're part of the coterie that was in the 5x5 exhibition with Print Austin that was juried by Mysczka Lewis. And a part of your prize is to come on a podcast. And here you are. So it's great to have you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Can you do us a favor and introduce yourself, everybody?
My name is Teresa Cole. I'm a printmaker. I've been making prints for many years. I live in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I also teach all forms of printmaking at Tulane University.
Oh, nice. What's their facility like? I've never been in their print shop.
I brag that I have the most beautiful classroom on campus. It's on the 3rd floor, which is very unusual for printmaking, but ceramics got the basement. And so we're on the 3rd floor up in the trees. So I'm surrounded by 14, 10-foot windows with, floor to ceiling windows and trees all the way around. I get really beautiful light, east light in the morning and a little bit of southwestern light in the afternoon.
How many people are in the department? You and how many others?
We each run our own areas. So some, like drawing and painting, have more than one faculty, but I am the only full-time faculty in printmaking. And the end of this year will be my 30th anniversary.
Wow.
Yes. And I'm planning a big 30-year print retrospective of work that I've collected from my students over the years.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Where's that going to be?
That will be in the student faculty gallery called the Carroll Gallery on Tulane's campus in our building. It's a beautiful space. And I have done exchange portfolios with every class I've taught. And I will be trying to show as much of that as possible. We're going to also digitize it all. So it'll be a scroll through with every image being shown as well.
Wow. That's amazing. And you make the boxes and the portfolio boxes and
stuff?
Well,
the boxes weren't made for the exchanges, and even most of them don't even have colophons, but I'm trying to get some funding for a student worker to help me build boxes this summer, and we'll, at least just folios, maybe just some little clamshell folios that we can put these in, and then I'll donate them to the Newcomb Archives at the university.
Oh, nice. Well, that's great. Tell me about your learning about art and prints, and where did that all start? Did you know when you were a tiny kid you were going to be an artist?
I did. I drew all the time. I had a sister that was pretty creative, and I wanted to emulate her. She was my older sister, so I was always trying to copy her. Even though we lived at the time in the north, in Pennsylvania, actually, we went to a Southern Baptist church. And my mother, to keep us quiet, would give us paper and pencils to draw. And so we spent a lot of time drawing in church, to say the least. Nice. I think that kind of just got the bug going. And then I knew by the time I was in 10th grade that I wanted to be a career artist. My sister also went off to art school, first more in Philadelphia and then Parsons. And then I ended up going to MICA. And my focus was fiber and textiles. And that's where I was totally centered on until I had a summer internship with a production weaver. And all I did was dress looms. I never got to weave at all. All I was doing was pulling warps through heddles and reeds. And I was just like, I don't think this is for me. But wow. I didn't discover printmaking until my senior year. I had printed on fabric in the fiber department, but somebody said, why don't you take a screen printing class in printmaking? And I was like, okay. So fall of my senior year, I took one and I was hooked. I took another one spring of my senior year. And then it was like, oh no, I'm done with school. What do I do? And I ended up actually working as a figure model at MICA. And one of the perks at that time of being a figure model was you got a free course. Oh. So I just started taking printmaking courses. I took my first lithography class the summer after I graduated, and then just kind of kept going till I had what I thought was enough experience. And I ended up working in an open access printmaking workshop in Aberdeen, Scotland.
Oh, wow.
A place called Peacock Printmakers. And it still exists in some sort of form. It's now called Peacock and the Worm for some reason. But
I've wondered too.
But it's funny because I met printmakers from all over the world, from Australia, South Africa, Germany, and it was just so engaging and fascinating. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do this when I get back to the States. And I went there to try and develop a portfolio for graduate school, and I made enough work to get into graduate school and went to Cranbrook for my master's in printmaking, but ended up in academia instead of running an open access printmaking workshop. But that may be my next life. So,
all right.
I'm trying to sort out my exit strategy, and in fact, I'm chairing a panel at SGC this spring called Exit Strategies, and there are 4 printmakers that have found ways to keep making prints, whether they've started their own shop or are working community based, or people that just have felt like they haven't, academia really wasn't for them, but they still wanted to be able to make prints. And it's hard when you don't have the facilities. We don't have a lot of open access printmaking workshops in this country. Kala in San Francisco or Oakland, and there's quite a few in New York. And one of my artists that's speaking is from Philadelphia. So there's things happening in really large urban areas, but not so much in a lot of the smaller areas. So,
right, we have one open access-ish. What's the definite? How do you define open access? Let's start there.
Well, that's a good question. I think it could be defined many different ways, and I think it depends on whether you're a nonprofit or maybe just trying to break even.
Right.
Usually, it's you pay a fee and have access, or there's community-based courses. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of different ways to define that, and some shops sell subscriptions, I guess, and others have a key access, and you just pay a fee and you can come and go whenever you want. And others, there's really specific times. I was in London, not this past fall, but the fall before. I had a sabbatical, and I found a little place called Bainbridge Prints, and they had a little key fob and a little code, and you had to sign up for your times online, but you pretty much had the space to yourself, which was kind of wonderful. But I was also trying to meet a few more people in the community, and so it was, wasn't as sort of interactive as the space I had worked at in Scotland was, but it was still great, and I was really happy to be able to have a place to make prints while I was in London.
It's so interesting talking about this whole idea of the collaborative, workshop, and everybody's there helping each other or whatever. And suddenly you're in this place where you don't have access to that. It's so funny that you can't you can't just conjure up people to bounce your stuff off of or something. So
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Community is so important, I think, in printmaking.
I think so too.
And I think, with teaching printmaking, I feel like that's also one of the really crucial issues is to really help develop community amongst my students.
I feel like in some ways you could consider your studio at Tulane to be open access in a sense, really, like it's people can sign up for class. I mean, it's different,
Yeah. I
obviously.
mean, as long as you're registered.
Sure, 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 sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we try to make things happen. I know a lot of university shops will bring in visiting artists and create, prints for artists. At Lafayette, the printmaker there, Brian Kelly, has this tremendous press, and the students work with it. And it's amazing. I think John Hitchcock was just there last week doing prints with Brian Kelly, and I would love to be able to do that, but our program's so small. It's just a little hard for me to do that. But that's another really exciting thing is printing for other people, because I feel like you learn so much about your own practice as a printmaker when you print for others, and sometimes what not to do. But also, I mean, it's just really, artists sometimes that aren't printmakers come in with these really inventive approaches to things. And then you have to reel them in and say, wait, but we got to be able to put this in the acid.
I live in Baltimore near Micah, and I do critiques for the printmaking department frequently. And they, in the last 15 or so years, have no professors who are trained as collaborative editioning printer type people. And they're all artists, engaged in their own practice, which is great, of course. But the students aren't really learning how to work in a shop and accomplish an edition for an artist, which is kind of, it's a whole other thing, really.
Yeah, it
I
is
don't
a
know
whole
where.
other thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I find some students are really suited for it. Since Tulane isn't an art school, it's a liberal arts college. My students come from all across the university. And one of my best students that I think could have become a master printer was from the math department. And, he just took studio art classes as a kind of release. But he took it so seriously and did such a beautiful job. It was like he discovered Crown Point Press, and he was like, wow, this is what this looks like professionally. And I'm like, yes, this is what it looks like professionally.
Hey everybody, it's Anne breaking in for 1 second to add an insert. Teresa and I were talking, and then right as I hit stop on the record, she goes, oh, I forgot to say this next part about the Tulane Master's Program and how it's fully funded. So this is a little insert, and then we'll pop right back out and keep going. So tell me about your master's program. It sounds like it's pretty great.
We have a fully funded master's program at Tulane. So that's full tuition waiver. And then our students get, I think, around a $13,000 to $14,000 stipend a year. There's also potential funding for summer programming. You can ask for up to $5,000. Most students get about $2,500, but depending on your project, there is the summer funding that's possible as well. It's a 2-year program, so it's very rapid. We want our students in there hitting the ground running when they come in, doing maybe a semester of experimenting and then really getting to it. It's a great program, very intimate though. Usually each area has a first year and a second year student.
Oh my gosh.
And we have glass, printmaking, painting and drawing, digital, ceramics, photography. What am I forgetting? I don't know. We have 7 areas. Most students get a private studio. There's one space that's larger and 2 students share. So that's really nice too. You get your own space and 24/7 access to the facilities. And we have incredible facilities. I have 2 tackage litho presses with a nice collection of stones and 3 intaglio / relief presses, some letterpress type. And it belongs to me. I have a very small little Vandercook proofing press, which is just like a giant old-fashioned credit card. But that's in the shop too. So, and our biggest intaglio / relief press is 44 wide by, I don't know, 70 something long, maybe. I don't think it's the biggest one Tackage makes, but it's, like the next size down. So it's pretty good.
So the graduate program, if each area has a first year and a second year, that means that you're all together for, okay, all right, classes and stuff.
So the grad students meet once a week for critiques as a cohort, and then there's a seminar class that covers issues of context and creation, pedagogy and professionalism. And then there's some art history that they take together as well.
And how is this all funded?
It's funded we're under the auspice of the School of Liberal Arts, and so it's funded through the university's graduate program. So all students that are in master's programs at the university are fully funded.
Are other graduate programs across the university not in the arts fully funded too, or is it just an arts thing?
No, it's across.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, our art history program has funding. I'm not sure all of the grad students are funded, but, there is funding in that program as well. And as well as like if you were economics or other areas in the School of Liberal Arts.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's one of the nice things about being part of, a liberal arts institution.
Right. Academic, yes. Backing, institutional backing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that most of the art schools are struggling at this point, which is kind of heartbreaking.
Yes, it is heartbreaking.
Okay, that was the insert for you. We're going back to our regularly scheduled programming, aka our conversation. Nice.
So, it's interesting to try and open doors for people in various ways. I may not make master printers out of these people, but I certainly will make print appreciators, and I think that's really crucial too.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, Micah had a publishing arm for a hot sack, and they do have, I forget how many editions they did. I mean, it was over maybe 10 years. But if the institution doesn't back that aspect of the art department or the print shop or whatever, there's just no way to,
right.
Yeah. You have to have the institution backing you.
Exactly. Yeah, they weren't doing that when I was there. Although Bob Blackburn was coming down when I didn't get a litho class with him, unfortunately, but he was coming down from New York and teaching lithography.
Oh, cool.
One day a week when I was a student there.
Did you have John Sparks for litho?
I did. I took Sparks. I did a lot of photo litho with him. I also did collotypes with him.
Oh,
which is another photo-based process that I've never gotten access to ever again. But I took from Sparks, I took from Allegra Uckler, and from Quentin Mosley.
Allegra and Quentin are both neighbors of mine in my neighborhood.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Neither of them probably remember me, but if say hello in case they do.
Okay. It's a small world, people.
Yeah, but it's like so many students come through, and it's like I left Baltimore. I moved to Scotland in '86. I pretty much left Baltimore in '86.
Okay, so you were here
I
for
started in
years.
'79. So
yeah,
maybe I shouldn't say that.
Well, you've already admitted that you've been at Tulane for 30 years. Teresa.
True.
Are you planning to retire after you hit 30 this year? I don't
think so. I mean, I think it'll take me 5 years just to move out of my office, but I'm planning it, but I'm not as smart as some other people. Actually, one of the women that's on my panel is Karen Kunk, who started Constellation Studios. And she smartly did it, I think, 10 years before she was planning on retiring. So, this just kind of snuck up on me, like the fact that I was like, 30 years and I'm not staying here that long. So I have my glass colleague is 76 and he's finally retiring this year.
Oh, okay. All right. There you go. Karen, I just interviewed Karen a couple of weeks ago for the pod. So by the time this is released, she will already have had her episode released.
Okay. Excellent.
Fascinating work.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Like, how did you do that?
I have a student that calls her the tapper. Beautiful, because you get those incredible fades that, yeah, it's pretty extraordinary how she works.
Yeah, I agree. But I also have to say, in your defense, Teresa, I would guess, I'm just hazarding a guess, that finding a real estate for a shop in New Orleans might be slightly more expensive than downtown Lincoln.
Yes. I do actually, I actually have a little bit of real estate. So it's not like I don't have the space. I just don't have the equipment, right?
Okay.
And I have to sit down with my accountant and see. And I'm not planning on starting a nonprofit. I just want it to break even. I don't want to, and I also don't want to be the administrator. Because I was chair on and off, an associate chair at Tulane, and it's like, I don't want to be the administrator. So it needs to create enough money that it can fund somebody that manages it. I just, want to do the fun stuff.
Think you've earned it.
Teach some workshops, invite some artists.
Well, maybe the administrator is one of your students who also would like to do it in exchange for access to the shop after they leave.
Well, yes, there's that too. But I also have to figure out, like, okay, what kind of presses? I mean, it seems like, a lot of people want access to litho, and that's a little harder for a lot of people to start up. Whereas, then I need to call Dave Tackage and see what kind of deals we can swing to.
Well, there's also always people selling presses on, I don't know if you're in that Facebook group of press equipments and blah, 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 whatever it is.
Oh, no, I'm not, but I need to be. Yes. I need to be. My problem is that we're pretty isolated here. It's like nothing's close to us. Atlanta's, 6.5, 7 hours away. Houston's 5.5. So there's not a whole lot around us. But who knows? Maybe somebody's trying to sell a press in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, and then I'll just find a truck and go.
And you can always pay someone to go get it, right?
Yes, exactly.
That seems easier. Mm-hmm. So with the 5x5 show that was part of Print Austin, what ended up being selected? Did you submit your entire portfolio? Okay.
We each submitted 5 pieces. And I guess it was the 5 pieces had to be, I guess, a strong enough statement on their own that, they were chosen. Although I didn't get to show all 5 because there wasn't enough space. So they only showed 2 of the pieces.
2?
Yeah.
Oh.
But, they're installation based, so they're pretty good size. Although I didn't get to see the exhibition. I wasn't able to go. It was right before our classes began. I should have just done it anyway, but I wasn't able to go to the exhibition and see the work hung. That's what I got to show. And actually, they're all installation, and they're all sort of modular, which is great when I'm trying to ship work. Can be a little tricky when you're trying to get other people to hang it.
I did want to ask you about hanging those babies.
I have to send videos of how it's done. I have some really bad videos of me, putting the work on the wall. But at least it actually shows the process. There are relief prints that have been printed first on washi on Japanese paper and then folded and dyed. So I guess it's considered the orizome art of, I think that translates as folded dyeing.
Oh, that's new to me. Okay, we got to dig in there, babe.
I've seen it referred to as a couple of different things, but I think that one's the one that's the most descriptive of what I'm doing. And I actually learned this process I had gone to Japan to take a papermaking workshop at the Awagami papermaking factory, which was just extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary experience. And I recommend it. It was interesting because there were people from all over the world, and not all of them were artists. In fact, very few of them were artists. One was somebody interested in origami. Another one was a woman that was a paper distributor in Australia. There was an attorney from Singapore, an engineer and his wife from Germany. It was really pretty amazing experience. So we learned how to scrape bark and pound mulberry, the inner bark of the mulberry tree, and then make the paper. But in the evenings, we had extra programming. It kept us really busy. But it was great because it was only 5 days, but there was so much packed into it. And one of the evenings, the owner's wife taught this folded and dyeing paper. And you essentially accordion fold a piece of paper, and then you have a long strip. And from that long strip, you either fold it in isosceles or equilateral triangles. And then you take those points and dip them into different colors of dye. And you can create these flower-shaped forms. You can create these, octagons, depending on how much dye soaks up by how long you leave it in the dye. And you're sort of pinching it to sort of keep it, also control it. Yeah, you get all these different results. And I thought, this is really fascinating. I had a whole bunch of sheets of paper that I had printed with white oil-based printmaking ink sitting in my studio after I came back from that trip. And I was like, I'm going to try to dye this and see what happens with the printing ink as a kind of resist. And it just sort of added to the complexity of the results, which I was very excited about. And then I had these beautiful sheets of paper, and I was like, what am I going to do with these? And I liked this idea of creating these lantern-like shapes a little bit. And, obviously inspired by being in Japan, I added bamboo sticks to them and used them to create these wall reliefs. And so that's when this whole series of sort of folded and dyed paper started with the installations. And I've been playing around with it ever since and trying different configurations. And then some of them have become flat too. Like, wasn't shown in the show, but it's in the catalog. The black and white pattern piece is a flat piece, but each element is separate, so that quilt-like process can vary depending on where the piece is hung and what kind of space I have to work with. So I've actually hung that piece in maybe 3 or 4 different iterations. So
the ones that are more sculptural, not flat against the wall, it looks like indigo ink. I'm not sure what you were using. Dye, excuse me.
Yeah, it's not indigo. It's meant to look like indigo, but It's a Procyon dye that I'm using.
Did they talk about the shibori? Like, I don't know what the connection is between the two. I just know that I like shibori when I see it.
They didn't talk about shibori. I think shibori is kind of has more relationship to fabric than paper. I've done a fair amount of shibori back in my day as a fiber artist. So I guess it's like everything comes full circle, I think. So, but definitely there are real relationships between the two, but that wasn't sort of connected when I was at that workshop. But for me, it connects most definitely.
Right. And so the ones that are sculptural are basically semicircles, half dome, half pipes, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I just take a flat piece of paper and attach sticks to each end. I put little notches in in the middle where it is, and then I hang them on nails on the wall to create a curve.
Oh, so there's no armature on the circle.
No,
part.
And that's why I can ship them flat.
Right. Brilliant. It could grow, or depending on, it's very customizable is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, they are very customizable. I mean, I do try to keep a kind of, I guess, essence to each one. But yeah, I did one piece that I showed at that print biennale in Three Rivers in Canada. And I showed it there as the zigzag piece on the wall, and it had really long sticks. Sometimes the bamboo has more of a presence, I guess, than other times. The paper has more of a presence. And so this one had this, like really strong bamboo presence. And then I decided that, I don't know, it wasn't working. And I reconfigured it as this kind of like almost centralized target type piece. And it was just so much better, I thought. And it was funny because it was like so big, spread out against the wall. I don't know, it might have been 15 feet. And then when I reconfigured it, and I think I used all but maybe 2 or 3 of the units, it ended up probably only being, I don't know, 5 feet wide then. But I don't know, it had a stronger presence. I think sometimes I forget what I name these pieces. I'd send you to my website, but I forget.
Oh, that's all right. The longer bamboo elements look like, like you would stick them in the ground outside somewhere, and I could just see it, like the Christo's gates, through Central Park or something with all of those elements. That would be so cool.
I hadn't thought about it outside. The environments here is pretty crazy. So, yeah, it's hard enough to get people to appreciate paper in an environment like this. I was sort of thinking, and my thought has been to sort of add more, and I haven't done this yet, so it's all speculative, and I hate it when my students do this, so maybe this isn't so good. But I was thinking about having woven bamboo sections as well as the paper. I just haven't quite figured out how I want that to materialize.
Right. The other thing that I was looking at is the cylinders that are hanging in one of the buildings at Tulane. I forget which building. Sorry.
That's okay. It's the I should remember. It's the business school.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
they look super cool. But when I look at them, I immediately was thinking wallpaper roll blocks, matrices.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, this is interesting because it connects all the way back to your fabric origins.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was exciting to do. That's the biggest project I've done. And the other idea is to toying with sort of shifting to trying to do more public-based art. Obviously having to shift materials because works on paper doesn't always. The other thing I'm considering and I've been playing around with is printing on clay, and is creating these half cylinders out of ceramics so that they could be attached to the wall and have some permanence to them.
Right. Well, that makes sense, I think.
Yeah.
When I read about your work, there's a lot about the pattern, but then there's a lot about conceptual meanings that are readable also. Can we just talk through all of what you're trying to say with them?
Yeah. I think with pattern, I see this really important aspect of identity, and identities from varying, cultures, and how much we have collected and absorbed a lot of that in our melting pot here. I'm always really intrigued by how American quilts look a lot like Islamic geometric patterning. In fact, in the mid-2000s, I went to India to research pattern. And some of the things that I found really intriguing there is that I had an artist that explained to me that stories were so well known, certain stories were so well known that they became patterns as well. So it was like narrative as pattern. Yeah, I was really curious too.
I got to think that one through.
Yeah, and I was just like, it's stories about Krishna and and how they become pattern. And I went to these incredible temples in West Bengal called Bishnupur, and there were 2 things happening in this village, and it was a tiny little village, but there were 75 terracotta temples, and they were all covered with these narrative tiles. And then there were weavers in this same village, and they had these incredible jacquard looms that, the apparatuses were up in the attic, and these guys were sitting on the floor where their feet had, the earth was dug out underneath their feet, and they were weaving these incredible, borders on these saris that were the same exact narratives that were from the temples. And it was just extraordinary. So it's really interesting to think about this whole idea as pattern and narrative. And it continues to tell the story as well.
So pattern as they're almost like Jungian archetypes, right? As long if the society understands what the symbols are or the stories are, and everyone agrees upon that, the pattern can be sort of a guidepost for.
I think it's carrying a history around too, that it's like, it's who you are, it's your identity, it's your history, it's your belief system. It's like this really multi-layered aspect. And maybe pattern becomes sometimes the wrong word to use, and maybe ornament becomes more important to kind of, because I realize pattern is often considered just a field, right? And I think, like edge to edge, right?
Right, and repeat, but yeah.
Ornament becomes something maybe less field-like.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
Okay.
I like it. I think the ceramic ones that's a great idea to make permanent installations have the same kind of import that the paper ones do. Although I do love paper.
I do too.
I'm a paper person.
Paper is so seductive, in Japanese paper, like whether it's Campi or Kozo or, it is incredible. And it is very strong, which is kind of great too. It can be so thin and so strong at the same time. Because the amount of processes that these sheets go through before I actually get them up on the wall is kind of, because they're printed and then they're folded and then they're dyed and then they're opened up and then I iron them and then I actually back them with another sheet of Japanese paper, of washi, just to give it a little extra strength before I do the curves. So sometimes I've discovered that humidity can cause them to sag a little bit. So the kind of stronger I can make them, the better. Yeah, it gets a little frustrating at times. But
that seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, but as printmakers, we embrace all that, right?
But I'm thinking through all of the papers I've ever seen. Aren't there options to make the papers that much stiffer / thicker?
Well, I have started using slightly thicker paper even just to begin with. Although I find it harder. Sometimes if it's really thick, it's harder to fold and dye.
Oh, true.
And also by adding the, like gluing a second sheet, and I'm using, archival bookbinding glue with the papers, it also adds a little extra structure as well. The pieces at the business school that you brought up are stainless steel mesh. I found this company that it's like mesh for sifting flour. So it's actually food grade.
Oh, wow.
But that keeps it from rusting, because of the grade of the stainless steel. And I had those printed with, I worked with a sign shop actually, and they had a giant inkjet printer, and we printed the patterns from the inkjet printer.
Right onto the mesh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what I like about that part is that they're, the light comes through them and they glow, Mm-hmm. I think that's really super. I guess it glows with the washi too, because it's so thin-ish. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Huh. Yeah, no, I like the cylinders are really cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to make some fully round paper ones. I haven't done that yet either. So.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of things. A lot of irons in the fire.
That's right. And the patterns that you use they're kind of like when you do the fold and dye, obviously they're more geometric and less controllable. Mm-hmm. They look like little puddles, looks like. But then the ones that you've printed on this mesh or is it the bees and the bunnies and I'm trying to make them out in this picture that I'm looking at. But they're much more aligned with, I guess, French decor. What's your inspiration on those?
Actually, the ones on the mesh are from, since it was the new International Business School. I actually collected patterns from all over the world. So some are from South America, some are from China, some are from Africa, Europe, Asia. So they're from all over to try and kind of connect this whole like international aspect.
They are found patterns, not ones that you've made.
They
But
are
you've made patterns in other works, right? Yeah.
I do both. I find patterns and
Yeah.
I make patterns.
Okay.
And I have appropriated, I guess as a true postmodernist, I've appropriated a lot throughout the years. I have, hundreds of blocks that I have carved. I mean, I started by hand carving everything in masonite. And most of my blocks, but just because of the size of the press that I have access to at Tulane, most of my blocks are 42 inches by 48. Up until we got some new technology in the early 2000, we got a CNC router and I started working with that a little bit, and then and also a laser cutter. But our laser cutter is not that big. The router I could work as large as I need to, but the laser cutter isn't quite as large. So I'm not hand carving as much as I used to, and my hands are pretty shot.
I'm gonna say.
But I mean, I'm still hand carving. In fact, I'm working on a series that's totally different. I sometimes the pendulum swings the other way. I'm working on a series of woodcuts of live oak trees that are not doing very well. We have these tree-lined streets that lead up to the university, and I park by these trees every day, and I'm watching them slowly die. So I'm doing a series of woodcuts as a kind of homage to these trees.
How do you portray time and decay like that?
Yeah. I'm not sure how much it's going to really show. Except there's a lot of branches with very few leaves on them, so they look very sparse. And so I'm hoping that'll and they'll be total silhouettes. And I may make the background a graphite gray to make it a little ominous. It might be a little too much, but we'll see. The nice thing about printmaking is you can change. Okay, that doesn't work. We'll change the,
Try a different color.
In the background at all. Maybe it's just black and white.
Well, that's funny. Printmaking is really so useful in so many ways and for so many reasons. It's kind of crazy that more people don't pay attention. So weird.
I think, print courses have the reputation of being hard, or there's a lot of work. And so I think you get the people that want to do that work, and other people that think like maybe another process is easier, but it's really not. Everything takes work.
Right, exactly.
It just depends on the focus you want to put into it.
I was thinking about talking about appropriation, and it seems to me that if you're appropriating patterns that are well known and beloved, like who owns the pattern, really? Well,
that's a really good question. I mean, I think that's why I wanted to go to find sources. It was important that I went to this stone carving that I was interested in this step well, to sort of experience it personally. Yeah, I think, things are a little harder when cultures are being kind of lost and absorbed and or just disappearing. There was a huge push by the Indian National Design Institute to try and save a lot of and record a lot of craftsmen around India, so that a lot of work just didn't end up disappearing. So, I mean, I would like to think that my work becomes an homage to my resources, and a way of sort of honoring these cultures that I've had the opportunity to visit and people that I've had the opportunity to spend time with. I had a residency in Calcutta in January of 2011. Yeah, 2011, and I worked with some sari printers.
Oh.
And I sent imagery of mine. I was working on these patterns of mosquitoes and moths, and I sent this imagery to them, and they hand cut these incredible blocks for me. And then I took the blocks to the sari printer, and I worked a couple of days having my mosquito bug fabric printed.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really, really amazing, and just so extraordinary to see these artisans working around me, and just the skills and just abilities they all have.
It seems to me that saris are much finer printing than the big, sort of rough wood blocks that you see on tablecloths and whatever else. And I just wondered if the process was different.
No, I mean, it's pretty similar. I think the printed ones are probably a little more casual than, say, some of the other ones, but they were printing on silk when I was there. Some of the details, I mean, the mosquitoes that they carved for me were, it was extraordinary how fine the detail was. I mean, so you can get really finely carved blocks, and they are, just usually they're in grids, and they just print them, and then there's usually often a really like elaborate pattern on the border, and sometimes something a little more simpler in the in the middle of the fabric. But yeah, they were getting extraordinary detail. Sometimes 6-7 layers of colors as well. I mean, these were elaborate works in this this small factory that I worked in.
Yeah, I feel like India. My husband was there in December, and on a trip of a lifetime. He's always wanted to go. He described a bit of cacophony because there's so many people, but just the color and the lights and the sort of vibrancy of the joy of life kind of a thing. He was really moved by it.
Every single sense is bombarded. It's like the minute you get off the plane, it's like you're hit with this really strong smell of like burning dung, and then sounds, and like people drive just by blowing their horn, because they don't use indicators. They're turning because they're like blasting their horn at you. And I mean, it's just incredibly beautiful, incredibly intense, and just the art and the just everyday life is so extraordinary. And then also so challenging.
Yes, he talked about that as well, for sure. As we're talking, my brain is plotting up another project for you, which is the assembled patterns, international patterns that you've printed on mesh that are hanging in the business school. I feel like there should be a book and like an essay on each, the pattern and where it's from word? And the meaning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to make some decisions too. It's like, okay, how do I synthesize this down into,
right.
I mean, the project kind of got a little out of control as far as like what, I mean, I think there are 30 cylinders. It's like, how do you decide which 30 images to work from? I mean, and some I have that are just like really near and dear to my heart. And then others are like, it's like, okay, I really need to be able to represent sort of other places, and what do I pick and choose from? And I spent a lot of time going back to historical, like early Peruvian weavings, Chinese ironwork, just trying to source so many different places. I spent a lot of time in the library. I love libraries. So, and, I probably could have had a couple of research trips out of that too. But I didn't have a whole lot of time to make that piece. So.
Oh, gosh. But, credit to them for commissioning a work from one of the faculty members as opposed to, some hotshot youngster from Brooklyn or something.
Yeah, I mean, they did buy a lot of work from local artists for that new building. And so, I feel incredibly honored to be asked to have done the atrium. So, it was an honor in that respect. But
okay, good.
Sometimes the honors don't always pay the bills. But.
Right. We could discuss that as the podcaster.
Right, exactly. How many people have said, "Oh, you'll get all this exposure by hanging your work." It's like, I have plenty of exposure. I need to pay the bills.
Right, exactly. Does the art history department offer a history of prints class?
Isolated? No, but I have a lot of art historians that have a lot of respect for prints. particularly our Baroque art historian, has a lot of respect for prints and is really interested in the technology utilized from that era of printmaking. So it's respected by the art historians, most definitely. But there's not a separate print history class. But, prints are touched on in a lot of courses, but not exclusively.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm always curious because, I didn't have one.
I didn't either. I mean, I'm trying to think. I did take an awful lot of art history at MICA, but I didn't have a history of prints. Although I think there might have been one offered while I was there, but, it wasn't my focus at the time.
Right. I actually think my former boss, Jay Fisher, might have been teaching the history of prints class for MICA. Like the kids would go up to the museum in the study room, and I don't know how. I mean, people took the class, so it must have been okay.
Right, exactly.
Who knows? So what's coming up next for you?
I'm going to finish these woodcuts of these trees. I'm thinking about actually proposing. I have 2 galleries that represent me, one in Atlanta called White Space and one here in New Orleans, Callan Contemporary. And I'm thinking about actually just doing just a black and white exhibition with these trees. I have a couple of interiors. I spent a little time in Rome 2 summers ago. Tulane has an affiliated fellowship with the American Academy. And I had the honor of winning the Lurchie Tulane affiliated fellowship at the American Academy. So I got to spend a month in Rome with a studio on the top of that beautiful building.
Nice.
I have a couple of interior pieces that the interior of Santa Sabina woodcut that I've not long ago pulled, that I think is going to go with these trees. So everything will just be really stark black and white. And then I also have some paper cutouts of some of the Cosmati floor patterns. I went researching these marble tile floors in these medieval churches, which are referred to as the Cosmati, and created these paper cutouts of the patterning. And so I want to show those and then these woodcuts. So I'm hoping that'll be my next exhibition at Callan. And then I've got a residency with one of my former grad students, Callan Coleman, at In Cahoots this summer. And we're working on a book project together.
Oh, nice.
It's going to be about sort of directions, north, south, east, and west, and the kind of symbolism that comes with directions. So we're still fleshing out our idea. But I'm really looking forward to spending a little bit of time in California, away from the heat and humidity of New Orleans in July.
New Orleans, right? Yeah, I've only been to New Orleans once, and it was in May, maybe early May. It was broiling. It was insane. You pronounced it New Orleans?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. Whoa.
You pronounce the E and the A.
New Orleans.
I guess because it's kind of like Orleans,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the way they pronounce it on public radio.
Okay. And we all go with public radio pronunciations. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you only say New Orleans in a song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's to Miss New Orleans because it rhymes. But
right.
Yeah. The locals don't really, don't say that.
Okay. It's not Nolans.
No, not really either. I mean, yes, slangy, but yeah, not actually either. But
okay.
But it's like we all know what you mean.
Yeah, right.
We all know what we mean too. I guess.
Right. Oh gosh. Well, all right. Is there anything that we should talk about that we didn't talk about?
No, we got off on some tangents, but
well, it happens. Yeah. That's the fun of a conversation.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you for coming on Platemark. Congratulations to you for being included in 5x5. It looked like a great show.
Thank you. It was actually a big boost for me because I had applied for a whole bunch of stuff right before my sabbatical, and kind of everything was not happening. And then I started I guess it was kind of at the same time I applied for 5x5, submitted my proposal for SGCI, submitted something for Mid-American Print Council Conference, and seemed, and then the In Cahoots, and everything came back. So, it's like all the stars and moons were aligned that day, I guess. So.
Right. I think, if you don't mind, I don't think on the pod that we have ever discussed the similarities and differences between MAPC and SGCI. What's your sense of the two organizations?
Well, I don't have as much experience with Mid-American. SGC I've spent a lot of time with. In fact, we even did a conference here in 2012. It's big. It's grown really big. And I think the nice thing about Mid-American is that it's a bit more intimate.
Yeah.
And so therefore there's not as many people. It's not as hard to see demos.
And MAPC isn't in until September, October or something.
Correct. Yeah. And then I've done some things. I've not with Impact, the International Print Conference that usually is different parts of the world. It was started in Bristol by the Center for Print Research at the University of West England. And the last conference was there. I'm hoping they're not having one this fall, but I think it happens every 3 years.
Huh.
And so I'm not sure where the next one is, but I
got to get on their list.
Scotland and Melbourne and Estonia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it happens in really great places, and it's really nice to kind of meet an international crowd as well.
Is it the same kinds of people that SGCI and Mid-America draw? The sort of academic printmaker professors and students and...
Yeah. Yes.
That's my sense.
It is. Yeah. Because a lot of times, particularly, I guess, with Europe and Australia, to be a professor, you need to have a PhD.
Oh, whoa.
And so they have PhDs in studio art. And so a lot of times these people are trying to, give their paper to sort of, help with their degree and all. That was the case in Australia. It was really impossible to do a panel. But I did an exhibition there with a bunch of artists from around the world called Pattern Matters. And surprise, surprise. But so it is really interesting what kind of the focus can be a bit more academic, and some of those actually.
Sure. Right. Yes, I think listeners probably know about my thing about PhDs. My motto is, art's not supposed to be hard if it's for everybody, and let's not complicate it any further, shall we?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where I stand. All right. Well, thanks again. It was really lovely talking to you, and I'm new to your work, and I'm really I'm loving getting to know it. So thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and appreciate being included in the 5x5. And Austin seems like they've got a really exciting thing happening, and I think I was foolish to not head over there and kind of see the whole thing, but someday I will.
No, I've not gotten over there either, so you're not alone. There's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on, and there's really exciting things happening in printmaking. So yay. Yeah. Thanks for championing that.
That's right. Shouting from the rooftops. Thank you for listening to this episode of Platemark with my guest, Teresa Cole. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. She's a delight to talk to. As usual, I'm going to tell you about some thank yous I need to send out. One, of course, to my guest, Teresa, for being a wonderful guest, and one to Dan Fury of Extension Audio for help with sound. Also one to Michael Diamond for the use of his original music, and one to Skip Barnhart and Lee Turner for their studio sounds that make up the soundscape at the beginning of the pod. Images are over in the show notes, as you know, at platemarkpodcast.com. And also there's a support and donate button. It's just me doing this, so if you value the content that I'm producing, consider becoming a monthly supporter. Your help would be most appreciated. All right, I think that's it. We'll see you next time.